All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here. I apologize for no video yesterday. I've been so busy and I'm just in general feeling under the weather, you know, just IRL stuff kind of going on. But it's Wednesday. It is Wednesday today, and we're doing our Wednesday video series where we highlight decks that aren't necessarily, you know, meta decks, things that we don't see very often, but did well recently in online tournaments. We don't really have a name for this series. You guys can comment down below what we should be naming this video series. I call it like Wacky Wednesday or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, you know, we're kind of approaching the end of the season real quickly. We're in the third week right now. This weekend, however, is PMPT number 21. That is Fantastical Finale. That's right. This weekend, February 21st, is the last PMPT tournament of this season. Fantastical Parade B2 season is you know, gonna be over here in just about a week or so. In fact, this week we should be getting an announcement for the new set, which I'm really excited about. Maybe it comes tomorrow. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. We'll cover it all on the channel for sure, but just keep in mind the ranked season's going to be wrapping up next week. This weekend is our last tournament of this season. Pokemon Day is, I think, next week, so it's really exciting. A lot of really cool things coming up, and I suspect a lot is going to be changing with Pokemon Pocket as well, so you're going to want to stay here on the channel to kind of keep up with everything going on. But like I said, go register. Link down in the description below. $150 cash prize pool. Gonna be a ton of fun. I cannot wait. Anyway, let's get right into the deck lists, because like I said, we're kind of in the third week, which means that, you know, some surprising stuff pops up. There's definitely been a nice progression of fringe meta decks, off meta decks, things that aren't really at the very top. We do know what the top of the meta looks like. It's, you know, Altaria decks and Hydreigon and some Suicune and things like that. So people are pretty understanding, I think, at this point of what the overall scope of the top of the meta looks like. But there's a lot of tournaments throughout the week. A lot of really surprising decks do well. The first one we're going to take a look at is from the Umbreon 99's Birthday Bash, a $30 prize pool. This is Kira 32092 from France, 6 and 4. They were playing the new Mega Medicham. Mega Medicham's a very interesting card. It is the newest promo card, so I think it's the third Mega promo, because we had Pidgeot and then Latios, and then now we have Medicham. None of the promo cards are ever that good. I don't know why. I think they're just afraid to give us like really broken cards as promos for whatever the reason, in case people miss out on them and then they don't get a chance to obtain the cards later on. But Medicham is interesting, and it's a stage 1 fighting type mega Pokemon. People love fighting. We'll take a look at the deck list here. So if you don't know what Medicham does, it's 1 fighting energy, 2 colorless for 100 damage, 180 HP. However, if you have 1 psychic energy attached to Mega Medicham, it does 140 damage. And then the caveat for the attack is that it's not affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon, which basically means it can hit through anything that would either stop the damage or reduce the damage, which is really cool. So it's a guaranteed 140 on anything, any Pokemon in the entire game. Now, 3 energies is what's a little awkward for Mega Medicham. When you compare it to, I guess the only really comparable thing to Mega Medicham would be like Mega Lopunny, which is another stage 1 fighting Mega. For Lopunny, for 2 energies, can deal, I think, a little bit more damage and confuse, but sometimes it doesn't deal any damage. So when we take a look at Mega Medicham, we have to compare it a little bit to Mega Lopunny, and from there, we can kind of build the deck list as to how we would typically build the deck. But here's a version of the deck that I actually kind of like, which is going to be playing Fighting Coach Lucario. That's going to bring this damage up to 160, which is a relevant number here. We can also play Training Arena to boost the damage even more, and we're even playing 1 copy of Red. So the concept of this Medicham deck is to play it as basically like a setup Pokemon with Protective Poncho. We can put that Poncho onto Lucario on our bench, or just onto the Medicham while we attach energies to it. This is a deck that's playing dual energies. So we're not playing like Giratina or Dawn or anything. We're just playing Psychic and Fighting energies in the energy zone, which kind of makes sense because the attack cost is double colorless. So you can kind of get away with it most of the time. You're not going to get 3 Psychic energies. Most of the time, you're going to get, like the majority of the time, you're going to give either a mix, at least 1 Fighting energy, or sometimes 3 Fighting, which isn't going to give you the 140, but will give you 100 damage. So the vast majority of the time, your first 3 energies being generated won't only be Psychic energies. However, that is something that this deck doesn't necessarily want to deal with. And then we're playing it with Meowth. And I actually really like Meowth, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to build Meowth decks, because it really is kind of the setup card, right? Before, setup decks had to play like baby Pokemon, which against more aggressive strategies really struggled because they didn't have a lot of HP and they were pretty easily KO'd. Whereas Meowth doesn't actually attack, so it doesn't ever take damage from things like Poison Barb, Nihilego stuff, or Rocky Helmets like you would have to deal with Chingling, but half the time it's immune from damage, right? So the attack draws a card instead of dealing damage, so you're not dealing any chip damage. That typically doesn't really matter. But Carefree Steps means that it's basically stalling, right? Because you have a 50-50 chance to not deal any damage to Meowth. So it's a really effective card. We see it with Chandelure. We've seen it in a couple of different strategies. In this deck list, they're playing it with Medicham to kind of just waste time, set up our board state, draw all our cards here, and then start hitting really hard with Mega Medicham, right? Because that's the, in general, the overall concept with Mega Medicham is that it's guaranteed damage, and it can be boosted by things like Fighting Coach Lucario, by Trading Arena, by Red. We have a lot of options. So if we can set up Mega Medicham and just deal a bunch of damage, potentially one at KOing some relevant Pokemon, that's pretty cool. And we now have Protective Poncho, which protects these setup decks from like Greninja, Water Shuriken, Cyrus strategies, which otherwise kind of stopped these types of decks from ever becoming relevant. And I like this. I like this concept for sure. Shout out to Kira32092. I don't think they went 6-4 in this tournament. I don't think Medicham's ever going to be something that really takes over the metagame. I do think we have opportunity for some fighting megas to be very relevant. I don't think that Lopunny, Medicham, or anything else. Do we have anything else? I don't even know. Are those the only two fighting megas? They might be. I don't think they're as good so far. I think that maybe if we get a Mega Lucario or something, that could be very interesting. It could be very strong. We'll have to just sort of wait and see. But Mega Medicham, interesting deck. And here is just one example of, Medicham deck that did well. Next up at the Meta Breaker pop-up number 3 is Ryoruko. I can't say the name. So tough. I apologize. From Japan. This is Mega Altaria and Banette. And I think we might have taken a look at this deck before here. This is just sort of a fringe off-meta way to play Altaria. And Altaria is definitely one of the best, most popular Pokemon in the entire game, and a very flexible Pokemon in terms of how we play it. This is going to be with Banette. Banette's really interesting. Nightbind Banette's actually really nice. It stops like dinos in the active spot from just popping off on you, which is cool. We have Chinglings as well. Klefki, we can tech in a Sightseer, Team Rocket Grunt to help us synergize with Banette. It's really cool. You know, we've seen a very similar deck like this, but with Gourgeist to kind of get around Oricorio. And Banette somewhat kind of fills that same purpose, although it's, Oricorio is not really a factor. So it's just another Pokemon that we can throw into Mega Altaria here and make the deck a little bit more flexible in terms of its overall core strategy. I do think that as long as you're playing Chingling and Mega Altaria, you're probably going to be able to win games just outright like that. But because we are playing 4 Stage 1 Pokemon, we can tech in Sightseer, which is pretty cool. And I think Sightseer is a totally fine card. And I've said it time and time again, I think it's worth playing Sightseer in certain decks, but you got to play like predominantly all Stage 1 Pokemon, which the Medicham deck didn't. But this deck, as we can see, is playing 4 Stage 1 Pokemon. So it kind of makes sense to run a Sightseer in your deck. We can still play Alicia. I like it. Altaria definitely is becoming like the mega Pokemon. We've had some other stuff relevant in the past, like Kangaskhan seeing some play, Blaziken saw some play back in the day, but at the end of the day, Mega Altaria is the mega Pokemon, and they've released a lot of megas up to this point, and Altaria is really the only one that's stuck and been competitively viable since the very beginning. I guess Absol, but you don't really build decks around Absol. You know what I mean? Like Altaria is a different animal altogether, but yeah, just a cool sort of, alternate way to play Altaria. I like to highlight decks like this sometimes. I know that this is somewhat pretty standard at this point, but very, very cool and a cool placement here. Great performance, 7-2 from Ryoruko. And anyway, I love it. So shout out to him. Next up at the Zero Gravity Gaming Full Art Cards plus Professor's Research Tournament, we have Pokebomb, who we highlight all the time on this channel for playing pretty cool decks. He is from Greece, and this is also going to be a Mega Altaria deck. Again, if you're playing Mega Altarias, you're probably going to be able to win some games, but this is with Gengar and with Mimikyu, a really fun deck. Let's take a look here. This is going to be the Bother Gengar, which again, I think is a strong card. Bother Gengar, I think, is one of the more underrated things in the entire game. It's really funny when you take a look at this card because it's been around, I think, from the very beginning. This is a super old card. But like this card, when you compare it to something like a Hydreigon, is hilarious, right? The effect is strong, 50 damage, and then they can't play any supporter cards from their turn, right? It's got 130 HP. It's a stage 2 Pokemon. When you compare this to like Hydreigon right now, is super funny. Hydreigon does 130, has more HP, can generate energies to itself. It's just a completely different ballgame. But I do still like Gengar, and it's going to be really useful in a number of different decks. Supporter cards are very valuable in the meta right now. Every deck plays Copycat or Cyruses and stuff. So Bother Gengar is going to be a really nice like leadoff option. And then we're only playing 1 Mega Altaria, 1 Indeedee, but we're playing Mimikyu. So, I think some concept here is to sort of maybe have Gengar just as an option to really shut down certain decks. And then we have Mimikyu to just sort of also stall. Like this to me, like there might be something I'm missing here, like a particular matchup where this Gengar Mimikyu combo is going to be really good in. But I think at the end of the day, these are just useful psychic Pokemon that you can play in the sort of the psychic Mega Altaria package, right? And at the end of the day, like even Indeedee can attack, Mega Altaria can deal big damage, you know, Mimikyu can stall for a little bit. Like it's a really fun deck. Peculiar Plaza gives all these Pokemon free retreat, which is really nice. So yeah, again, I just wanted to highlight it because I thought it was pretty cool, but I might be missing the point entirely as to like what this deck is supposed to be counterplaying. He lost to a Suicune and lost to a Mimikyu Greninja, and Greninja definitely seems to be the thing that I would probably not feel very confident about, you know, when I'm playing this deck, just mainly because, you know, Indeedee on the bench or Mega Altaria, things like that, can be a little suspect with Greninja decks, but a really cool deck, another Mega Altaria alternate deck list, so I wanted to highlight it. Big shout out to Pokebomb for his 6-2 run at this tournament. Next up, though, is going to be at the Zero Gravity Gaming Full Art Cards Professor's Research Tournament. Again, this is 7 Earless, or Fearless, I suppose is what his name's supposed to be, from Canada. And this is a really fun Jumpluff deck. And this is kind of becoming one of these sort of fringe meta decks that people have been playing over the last week. Really, really cool. You know, whenever we can see like really great examples of Protected Poncho and Meowth, because those two cards go together really well, I always find it to be just super cool. So this is something I haven't highlighted yet on the channel, but it's becoming a little bit more popular. And this is Jumpluff. That's right, Jumpluff EX with Oricorios and with Meowth. So the whole concept here with Jumpluff, of course, always is that it hits for 70 and then it retreats to the bench. This always was kind of a sketchy strategy in the sense that, you know, Rocky Helmets exist, Greninja exists, so there's a lot of ways to get around retreating to the bench after you attack every turn. And you also want to play this with a, you know, something that is protected when you do bring it into the active spot, right? Because you're swapping Pokemon. So Oricorio Jumpluff has really not been anything new. That concept has been around for quite some time. However, you know, Greninja can just bypass that. They can just bring Jumpluff back into the active. However, Protected Poncho is going to stop them from doing that. So, you know, as long as they don't have like a Rocky Helmet, Jumpluff will never take any damage after it attacks, which is really cool. So it's a really actually efficient strategy to utilize Jumpluff. Now, Oricorio is a good Pokemon. It is immune to a lot of attackers in the game, but coincidentally, it's not immune to Hydreigon. So what are we doing against the Hydreigon matchup? Well, we have Meowth now. So we can attack with Jumpluff, go into Meowth, have a 50-50 chance of taking 0 damage, and then just retreat back into Jumpluff and repeat that process. So it's really cool. You know, I think Meowth, Mars, I love Mars as well. Just thrown into this deck to kind of slow your opponent down even more. And then Protected Poncho is a really big deal. So we've seen Poncho in a couple of different strategies. It's nice for different setup decks. This isn't a setup deck, but it is sort of a stall, like hideaway deck. You know, I don't know how to define anything like this. Jumpluff really is like the only thing in the game that does anything like this. But this is a super fun deck and a very interesting strategy. Double Jumpluff EXs, but only 1 Hoppip. And that does make sense because I think most of the time, yeah, once the Jumpluff goes down, you're going to lose the game, right? Because your opponent will kind of inevitably get through the Meowths, and Jumpluff doesn't deal a ton of damage. So I think the main concept here, and also Meowth and Hoppip are 50 HP Pokemon, massively underrated right now with Licia. I think that Meowth is actually going to be, you know, potentially kind of a staple card moving forward. It's an exceptionally strong card, and it's definitely something we have to look for moving forward. So I really love this deck. I love the strategy. It's been quite some time since we've seen Jumpluff be any somewhat relevant in the metagame, and this is a very unique strategy, a very cool strategy that, again, you just don't see very often in Pokemon Pocket. And there's a lot of creativity to be had. That's what this video series is all about, right? This is not a deck list or a result that I would typically ever cover, right? Unless a deck like this got like a top 8 at one of our, you know, weekend tournaments, it's not something I would really consider or talk about. So this video series that we do every week on Wednesday gives me the opportunity to talk about decks like this that maybe aren't that popular, but are very creative, very cool, and again, did well at an online tournament. 5-2 at this tournament here. If you take a look at the matchups, lost to Suicune and Greninja. Unfortunately, maybe those Protected Ponchos didn't do it for him, and then did lose to an Altaria deck, but beat a couple of Hydreigons and beat a Suicune deck as well, which is just, in general, super cool. So a very, very fun deck. Shout out to, Fearless here from Canada. I love it. I really do love the deck. This stuff like this is the reason why we make these videos on Wednesday. So very, very cool. Next up is going to be Pyro de Chef from Italy, 6-2 again at the same tournament, a Rare Candy Cartel, maybe a different tournament actually. And it's a throwback. It is a throwback. We have Arceus, Turbo Arceus here. I actually think stuff like this is pretty interesting. And I had this idea, and I'm not going to say that I came up with this because I did not, but when Hydreigon really started to kind of take over, and we take a look at here, 2-1 into Hydreigons, did lose in top 32 a Hydreigon, which is unfortunate, but when Hydreigon was taking over, I thought to myself, well, like, what about Carnivine? Do you guys remember the Power Link Carnivine, which does 50 damage for 1 energy? As long as we have an Arceus EX on our bench, that is hitting for weakness on dinos. That is one KOing a dino in the active spot, which is really, really, really cool. This whole deck is basic Pokemon, so starting Plains works in here. And then, of course, we can play Pichu, Turbo Arceus with Oricorio like we always used to do back in the day. So it's a really cool deck. It's a really fun strategy. I think that Turbo Carnivine being a grass-type aggressive strategy, similar to how we see Kartana be really effective into Hydreigon, is really nice because a lot of times they either start Absol or they start Dino, right? Those are the Pokemon that they oftentimes are leading off with in the active spot. So being able to deal, 50, 70 damage to a Mega Absol on turn 1 is a really big deal. And KOing a Dino turn 1 is also a huge deal. So Carnivine's going to be a really great leadoff option. This is a deck that plays grass energies because, Pichu's going to generate energies to Oricorio and Arceus, and then Carnivine needs a grass to attack. So this is a very old strategy. We even have Sky support Shaman to get Arceus and Oricorio out of the active spot, if, of course, we do lead with them. It's a really fun deck. It's a very, very cool deck list. Something that I wanted to highlight because it actually makes a ton of sense given the current state of the metagame. Arceus is an interesting Pokemon. I know everybody's playing the new Arceus, that is Kangaskhan, but this is a 2-prize Pokemon instead of a 3-prize Pokemon, and it does still work with starting Plains, right? So, 100 HP Carnivine, 160 HP Arceus, like, there's some potential here for some of these older strategies to kind of come back into the metagame. Copycat makes this a little bit more consistent as well, and we still, again, have all of the other stuff in the game that we would normally be playing with a deck like this. So it's very cool. I thought something like this was kind of uniquely well positioned, so I wanted to highlight it in today's video. Shout out to Pyro to Chef, 6-2 at this tournament. Very respectable performance. Unfortunately, did lose to Hydreigon in top 32, but a really fun deck. The Carnivine stuff's super cool. Super Piece from Germany getting a 2nd place at a tournament here with Charizard. So again, this is more of a proof of concept thing. I know we're all familiar with Charizard. We're not going to be like super surprised by this deck. We are playing 1 Lucky Ice Pop in here. We are playing 1 Protective Poncho. So there is, again, some use cases for Protective Ponchos here to kind of set up that Charizard on your bench and not get, sniped by a Greninja. So again, people say Protective Poncho hasn't been that relevant this season, but I really think that the Protective Poncho's seen a little bit of play. And I think realistically, it doesn't fit that well into a lot of the top tier meta decks, but there's so many fringe strategies that actually can be improved by playing Protective Poncho. So I actually really like its inclusion to the game. But yeah, anyway, it's Charizard. So this Charizard deck got 2nd place at a pretty large tournament, which is really fun to see, right? So if you take a look at his matches here, went 5-2 in day 2, lost to a Greninja Suicune, lost to an Altaria Greninja, and then beat a bunch of meta decks this tournament. Ended up losing to Hydreigon in finals, which always is going to be a really tough matchup for Charizard. But 9-3 total, 2nd place of this tournament. Really, really cool. Shout out to Charizard because I do think this is something that's going to get better and better as time goes on. The more strong 3-prize Mega Pokemon we get, the better Charizard will become. So it's interesting. I think this season's been Charizard's best season so far for sure. And I think next season it's only going to get better. So this is something that we have to keep our eye on. Charizard likely will be really relevant as more and more time goes on. So we'll have to see how that happens. But I just wanted to showcase it because it did get 2nd place. Okay, went all the way to Grand Finals at a tournament. So it is possible. It is a strong deck. Shout out to Super Piece. Next up at the PMPT number 20 tournament, our tournament this past weekend, was Ghost 2 from Canada. He made day 2 playing Skarmory. We weren't able to really highlight it because he didn't make it into like top 16 on Meta Monday, but it's Wednesday, so we can highlight him now. Shout out to Ghost 2 from Canada. Skarmory EX, very similar to sort of the Snorlax Indeedee deck that we've seen, or the Steelix Indeedee deck. This is just Skarmory, which to be fair, I actually kind of like in a lot of ways. Skarmory only does 70 damage. That's the main downside here. Only has 140 HP, but as we've seen here, Steel Apron is going to reduce that damage by 10. Indeedee's going to heal 40 every turn. Starting Plains going to give you 20 plus HP. And then we have Lucky Ice Pops, which makes, I think, all of these strategies that much more competitively viable. And then we have Jasmine, which when we play it for the turn is going to reduce the damage we take by 50. So definitely a lot, just a ton of opportunity for Skarmory to be really annoying to get rid of. And it has a 2 energy attack cost. So if you do go 2nd, you can maybe get on some good pacing here. Unfortunately, a deck like this, if you lead Indeedee and you go first, you're kind of a sitting duck just because you don't really have a great way to kind of get into Skarmory early enough. But this is a strategy that can win games, right? Very similarly to the Snorlax stuff and the Steelix stuff. It's just maybe a little bit more, it's all 2-prize Pokemon, you know what I mean? So it's just a little different. I don't know if I would play this over Snorlax or Steelix, but it is very cool. Skarmory EX making day 2 at our tournament this past weekend, so I wanted to highlight it. Shout out to Ghost 02 from Canada, or just Ghost 2, I suppose, from Canada. Very, very cool. Just, it's Skarmory, and I've been wanting to talk about this, so we saved it for the Wednesday video. Next up, and is this lastly? No, we have 2 more decks. This is going to be at the Meta Breaker pop-up number 3, is going to be Zeke Holes from the United States, and this is Mega Pinsir, guys. Shout out. Mega Pinsir. When was the last time you saw Mega Pinsir place well at a tournament? 7, 2, and 1, made it all the way to top 4. Look at all these Hydreigons. Look at these matchups here. 4 and 1 into Hydreigon. That's my boy. Shout out to Pinsir, because this is a card that really isn't even that bad. I just feel bad for Pinsir because it like never really had a chance for whatever the reason. I think people just sort of looked at this card and they were like, yeah, I mean, well, probably not. You know what I mean? Like that was people's initial concept. But now, you know, Hydreigon's running around everywhere. We've seen the Leafeon Teal Mask Ogerpon combo before. It's actually really not that bad at all. But now we've just kind of thrown in a Mega Pinsir with a Serena as just an option here. 1 will, so we can 1-hit KO things if we really need to. Mega Pinsir can still 1-hit KO an Absol, can 1-hit KO a lot of Pokemon, quite frankly. It does 150 damage. If you do flip heads with it. So it's a strong Pokemon. Also, Leaf Cape, Mega Pinsir, 300 or 200 HP rather, and then Erica's like it's a tanky guy here. So this is just sort of a smaller or very different example, not very different, but a slightly different example of like some of these Leafeon Ogerpon decks. We've seen Leafeon Celebi place well. We've highlighted it. So why not Pinsir? You know what I mean? Like why not? I like Mega Pinsir. I really do. I wish certain Pokemon didn't have 3 energies in their attack cost because it really does kind of limit things. Luckily, boosted Evolution Eevee and Leafeon EX means that most of the time we're able to get some of those energies a little bit more quickly. So I think that Leafeon with boosted Evolution Eevee is actually, again, somewhat been relevant this season just because Hydreigon, right? So like these sort of grass type strategies are actually not that bad. Leafeon can live a hit from Hydreigon plus Leaf Cape. It's actually somewhat tanky, pretty fast paced as well. And again, if you go second, maybe you KO that Dino. So there's a lot of things I really like about Leafeon and about the grass strategies. Unfortunately, Ogerpon is just a little bit of a, it's mostly used as like a backup attacker, but in some strategies it can do a lot of damage, but at the end of the day, you know, you're gonna have to get like 4 or 5 energies on this thing to want to KO a Hydreigon, which is really tough. But it does stop you from getting poisoned, and as we know, these Hydreigons are playing Poison Barb Nihilego, so it's just a relevant card in general. The grass package in Pokemon Pocket is this close. It really is. I think we're like super close to having a super broken grass type strategy. All we need is like really one good attacking Pokemon, and the deck can really thrive. So yeah, super cool. Shout out to Mega Pinsir because again, you know, when was the last time we saw Mega Pinsir really pop off? You know, shout out to Zeke Holes from the United States. Very, very cool. Lastly, though, is my boy, is Mega Swampert at the Meta Breaker pop-up number 3. Fogel P. Fau from Germany here. Dude, it's Mega Swampert. My favorite Mega in the entire game is Mega Swampert. I just love Mega Swampert as a Pokemon, quite frankly. And when you combine that with the fact that this is a hilarious like RNG energy discard Pokemon, like I just love it. 230 HP, heavy helmet, all of that good stuff. Lucky ice pops, you love to see it. Mantike to generate additional energies here, and then we got a Cramorant. You know, we're rocking Cramorant in here because like literally, why not? Cramorant is the bench sniping Pokemon now for water type. We haven't really seen it see play, but it's the same as like Leap Over Absol or the Heatmore that does 30 damage. Is it Tongue Whip? I forget. But there's a bunch of Pokemon like this, Hitmonlee, of course. So there's so many. Water type does have one now. I don't know if this is like the deck to use Cramorant necessarily, but it is a Pokemon that likely will be relevant at some point. And it's Mega Swampert, so I just, you know, I feel obligated. If Mega Swampert places well in a tournament, I gotta highlight it. I gotta let you know because it's my favorite. I love Mega Swampert. 7-2 at this tournament. Look, what is this? Why did he play only Hydreigons? What was this? What is this? What is this metagame? What is this? How is this possible? This man hit only Hydreigons pretty much? What is this matchup spread? I did not check this before the video. This is incredible. This man went 1-2. Well, he lost twice to Hydreigon, but he played it. How many games is this? Did he play 8 Hydreigon matchups? What is going on? Imagine this man's run in the tournament. That's hilarious. This man walked into the tournament and said, I'm playing only Hydreigon today. He did play a Melmetal Berserker, and he ended up winning that matchup, which does kind of make sense. But that's crazy. This is what the meta is right now. If you're going into one of these tournaments, expect to play just all Hydreigon. So he performed pretty well. Went 7-2. I mean, he went, what is it, 6-2 in a Hydreigon? That's pretty impressive, honestly. Shout out to this guy. You'll love to see it. Anyway, shout out to Mega Swampert. I love it. Shout out to all these players and all these tournaments. Again, guys, if you don't play it in the PMPT tournament this weekend or any weekend really for that matter, definitely check out what other tournaments there are throughout the week because people are running tournaments all of the time. Anyway, Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching this video. What did you think of these decks? What did you like? What, let me know what you guys think. I love the Wednesday videos. It's always just a fun thing to do. And I love to highlight players in decks that aren't necessarily, always at the front lines, right? Which is pretty cool. Also, like I said, the trailer and the announcement for the next set should be coming maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday. So stay tuned for that. We should be covering it on the channel for sure. We're just going to wait for that information to come. And again, this weekend's the tournament. We'll probably have that streamed. And then, yeah, as we get into next week, it's going to be all about the new cards, new strategies, and planning for all of that. So it's going to be exciting for the next couple of weeks. Again, Pokemon Day next week. There's a lot going on, quite frankly. And I've been super busy, so I haven't been able to grind ranked a lot or stream or do anything like that. So I apologize. But we'll still try to put out the videos when we can, for sure. So anyway, that's it, guys. Let's get out of here. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow. If not, we'll see you Friday. And yeah. Bye.